It was a gloomy autumn evening when James, a young and unsuspecting pizza delivery driver, embarked on a journey that would forever haunt his memories. As a pizza delivery driver, he had seen his fair share of bizarre occurrences, but nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to encounter. James had just finished another mundane shift at the pizzeria, his mind already drifting towards his evening plans with friends. His phone buzzed, breaking his reverie. It was a new order, destined for a remote area he had never been to before. The address, scribbled in eerie handwriting, sent a shiver down his spine. 1217 Moonlit Grove Road. Moonlit Grove Road was infamous in the small town for its reputation as the haunted road. Legends whispered of spectral figures, strange sounds, and eerie happenings along its length. However, James wasn't one to be easily frightened, and the promise of a hefty tip was enough to coax him into accepting the order. As he set off, the sky grew darker, and the forest canopy seemed to close in around him. The forest's oppressive silence only amplified the unease that was building in his chest. The GPS directed him deeper into the woods until he reached a clearing. In the midst of the clearing stood an old, decrepit building that looked as if it had been forgotten by time itself. This had to be the place. The building's windows were boarded up, and the wooden planks appeared to have seen better days. The atmosphere was heavy with an indescribable sense of dread, but James was determined to complete his task. He parked his car, grabbed the pizzas, and hesitated before making his way to the door. As his knuckles rapped against the wood, a strange rustling noise from inside made his heart race. "Hello, pizza delivery?" he called out, trying to sound more confident than he felt. The rustling continued, growing louder and more unsettling. He felt as though unseen eyes were boring into him from within the building. Just as he was about to turn and leave, a flicker of movement caught his eye, an indistinct figure watching him from behind one of the windows. The figure seemed to materialize out of thin air, a pale face with wide, unblinking eyes that were locked onto him. A chill crept down James's spine as he met the stranger's gaze, his heart pounding in his chest. Without warning, the figure disappeared from the window, and James was left standing there, his heart racing and his mind racing to rationalize what he had just seen. Shaken but determined to complete his delivery, James backed away from the door and fumbled for his phone. He dialed the customer's number, hoping for some form of confirmation. Just as he pressed the call button, he heard a whisper on the other end, a distorted, almost inhuman voice that sent a jolt of fear through him. The voice murmured, "Come inside." The phone fell from James's trembling hand as he backed away from the building. Panic gripped him, and he turned to run back to his car. But as he reached for the car door handle, he froze. Each of his tires had been slashed. His heart sank as he realized that someone had done this while he was at the door. He was trapped. With his heart pounding, he fumbled for his phone and dialed 911. He explained his situation, his voice trembling as he described the building and the unnerving events that had transpired. The operator assured him that help was on the way and instructed him to stay on the line. As he waited, his gaze remained fixed on the building, his unease growing with each passing moment. The minutes dragged on like hours, and every rustling leaf seemed to magnify the tension in the air. The forest seemed to come alive with sinister energy, and the building itself appeared to shift and creak as though it were alive. And then, in the midst of the unnerving silence, he saw her, an ethereal figure standing at one of the windows, her eyes opened wider than any human should be, and a faint, unsettling smile playing on her lips. James's breath caught in his throat as their eyes met. He felt a connection that went beyond sight, an inexplicable bond that held him captive, unable to look away. Her gaze seemed to penetrate his very soul, and he felt a dark presence enveloping him. A shiver raced down his spine as he tore his gaze away from the window and fumbled for his car keys. He needed to get out of there, to escape whatever malevolent force was at play. He jumped into the driver's seat, his hands shaking as he inserted the key into the ignition. With a desperate turn of the key, the engine sputtered but refused to start. "No, no, no," he muttered under his breath, his heart pounding in his chest. He jumped out of the car and quickly inspected the tires. Each one had been slashed, rendering his only means of escape useless. His mind raced as he considered his options, but a sinking feeling told him that he was running out of time. As he stood there, torn between fear and desperation, he heard a soft, eerie laughter behind him. His heart skipped a beat as he slowly turned around. There she was, the woman from the window, standing mere feet away from him. Her eyes seemed to pierce through him, and her smile widened as she spoke in a voice that sent a chill down his spine. "I've been waiting for you." James's breath caught in his throat, and a wave of terror washed over him. Without thinking, he turned and sprinted towards the building, his heart pounding as he pounded on the door, his voice a mixture of fear and desperation. "Let me in! Please, let me in!" The door swung open with a creak, and he stumbled inside. The interior was just as decrepit as the exterior, and a putrid odor hung in the air. James's gaze darted around, searching for any sign of the woman, but she was nowhere to be seen. He backed away from the door, his breathing heavy, and tried to steady his racing heart. But then, a voice whispered from behind him, icy fingers of dread caressing his neck. "You can't escape me." He spun around to find the woman standing there, her unnerving smile wider than ever. She moved closer, her gaze unrelenting, and he felt a paralyzing fear grip his very being. His mind screamed at him to run, to find a way out, but his body wouldn't respond. He was trapped in her gaze, a prisoner of her haunting aura. Her voice echoed in his ears, growing louder and more unsettling with each passing second. Just as he felt like his sanity was about to give way to the overwhelming terror, a surge of adrenaline jolted through his veins. He forced his legs to move, stumbling backward as he broke free from her gaze. He crashed through a door, stumbling into what appeared to be a long-abandoned kitchen. He looked around, his mind racing as he tried to find a way out. There in the corner, he spotted a grimy window that was partially boarded up. With a newfound determination, he rushed toward it, using all his strength to tear away the boards. The window was small, but it was his only chance. With a final burst of effort, he squeezed through the opening, ignoring the splinters that bit into his skin. He tumbled outside and hit the ground hard, his body aching but his mind focused on one thing: escape. He staggered to his feet, his gaze fixed on his car in the distance. Adrenaline fueled his every step as he sprinted toward the car, his heart pounding in his ears. He threw open the driver's side door, his fingers fumbling with the key. He turned it in the ignition, praying that this time it would work. The engine roared to life, and relief flooded through him. Without a second thought, he slammed his foot on the gas pedal, the tires screeching as he tore out of the clearing and onto the road. He didn't dare look back, afraid of what he might see. Hours later, after having put miles of distance between himself and that accursed building, James finally pulled over at a gas station. His hands were still shaking as he parked the car and leaned back in the seat, his chest heaving. He wiped sweat from his brow and took a few deep breaths, trying to calm his racing heart. As he sat there, the events of that night replayed in his mind like a horrifying movie. The woman's unnerving smile, her haunting voice, it was all too vivid, too real. He knew he could never erase those memories, no matter how hard he tried. James eventually managed to gather himself and drove back to the pizzeria. He returned to a concerned boss and coworkers who had noticed his absence. As he recounted the night's events, their expressions shifted from disbelief to a mixture of sympathy and unease. Days turned into weeks, and James couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of those unblinking eyes following him wherever he went. He started experiencing sleepless nights, plagued by nightmares of the woman with the eerie smile. The laughter, the whispers. It all echoed in his mind, a constant reminder of the horror he had endured. Haunted by his experience, James made a life-altering decision. He quit his job as a pizza delivery driver, unable to face the prospect of encountering the unknown again. He relocated to a different town, hoping to leave the past behind and rebuild his life. But the nightmares persisted, a relentless torment that refused to release its grip on his mind. Each night, he would wake up drenched in sweat, his heart racing as he relived the terrifying encounter. He sought therapy, but no amount of counseling could erase the trauma that had been etched into his very being. Years passed, and James's encounter with the woman in the woods became a distant but ever-present memory. He never returned to Moonlit Grove Road, unable to face the place that had brought him such unimaginable terror. He focused on rebuilding his life, finding solace in a new job and a supportive circle of friends. Yet, despite his best efforts, the past would never truly release its grip on him. The woman's face, her unsettling smile, and her chilling words continued to haunt his thoughts. The nightmares persisted, a constant reminder that some horrors are not bound by time or space. To this day, James remains haunted by the memory of that night, an experience that shattered his sense of reality and left him forever scarred. The woman in the woods, with her wide, unblinking eyes and her chilling smile, is a specter that lingers in the depths of his mind, a reminder that sometimes the line between the macabre is thinner than we dare to imagine. And as the moon casts its eerie glow on the forests, those who hear James's tale find themselves gazing uneasily into the darkness, wondering if there are entities lurking in the shadows, waiting to ensnare the unsuspecting in their chilling grasp.